Shout out to Baby Smack. What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Kev Mac videos. Today, I will be profiling Curtis Buddha Morrow, the story of a West Side Crip, who happens to be the reason behind the blue bandana.
Kev Mac video, you know this is for sure. Kev Mac video, open your soul, represent your ghetto, baby. Kev Mac video, you know this is for sure. Kev Mac video, open your soul, represent your ghetto, baby. For the dime moves and the lokes, for the 6-4s on spokes, for the OGs that did a dime, came back around on parole, for the homegirls with the scrap game, little homies that gang bang, from Pelican Bay to YA, rearrange your mind frame. Yeah, I know what you been through, shit you had to go tend to. Your mama gave birth on the turf, I know them killers you kin to. This for the lost generation, broke as hell, mad and impatient. But if you know your history, you can't have a strong foundation, baby.
Curtis Buddha Morrow was born in Tennessee on September 23, 1954. At some point during his early years, he migrated over 1,850 miles west to Los Angeles, where he lived with his grandmother on 105th Street, a street that would later become known as 10-5 Gangsta Crips turf. In 1971, Buddha attended Washington High School. To some, he was considered a bully, but to others, he was highly respected and loved. He left a lasting impression on everyone he encountered. In Tookie's book, Buddha is described as 5 foot 8 inches tall, 180 pounds, stocky with a baked brown complexion. His almond-shaped eyes would tighten when he was intoxicated. One night, Tookie's girlfriend Bonnie threw a party in her mother's garage on 106th Street. That night, Bonnie introduced Tookie to two feared neighborhood figures, Monk, short for Monkey Man, the founder of Underground Crips, and Curtis Buddha Morrow. They weren't invited. They crashed Bonnie's party, scaring some of her friends away. Tookie described Buddha and Monk as having a vicious reputation as a tag team. They wanted in on the circle of friends, and from that night on, Buddha and Tookie became inseparable.
Buddha, Warlock, well, Buddha and Tookie was really close. Buddha was, they became very close. That was probably the closest person to him before, Erskine. Erskine was the closest. And I don't know what happened with him and Erskine. I don't know what happened, where they fell off at. As I got older and think back, I believe Erskine was going a different direction, chose to go in I'm tired. He saw where this was headed, and he kind of...
His name kind of fades out the mix.
Exactly. Then, after Erskine, him and Buddha became close.
One day, Buddha called Tookie and told him about a place called Factor Brookings, located a little over 100 miles from L.A. He slid Tookie the phone number of his director, Bob Simmons. Bob was also a member of the board of directors of the Watts Summer Festival in 1969. Like many of us, Bob was non-judgmental when it came to hoodlums, thugs, misfits, outcasts, gangsters, the uneducated, or juvenile delinquents. Bob never forgot the background in which he came from, nor did he turn his back on the culture. He himself came from a gangster background to a military man that wanted nothing but good for our youth. He wanted our people to stay out the system. He wanted our people to have fun, enjoy life, and most of all, he employed troubled teens and young adults. Eventually, Bob found himself desperately looking for a place to open up a youth camp. Simmons tried his best to get funding for 6 months unsuccessfully. When John Factor found out what Simmons was trying to do, he got behind him and bankrolled his business endeavors. He told Simmons to find a campsite, and when Bob found one, he cut Bob a check for $75,000. Had you ever been to Factor Brookings?
Yeah, so Mouse and Took were at Factor Brookings.
Factor Brookings get his name in part from John Factor, a Jewish businessman born in England. His family migrated to America in 1906. They joined his elder brother Nathan in St. Louis, Missouri. In 1926, Factor perpetrated a stock scam in England that netted him $8 million. Some of his victims were members of the English royalty. He subsequently fled to Morocco and executed another major scam, rigging the tables at the Monte Carlo casino and breaking the bank. He then returned to the United States. This time he moved to Chicago. In 1943, he was fined $10,000 and sentenced to 10 years in prison by the federal government. He pled guilty with several Confederates to charges of swindling $1.2 million from 250 investors in a fraudulent whiskey bottling scheme. In 1955, Factor took over the Stardust Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Many say he was probably a figurehead for other Chicago mob figures. He sold the hotel for $7 million in 1962. Allegedly, he ran the operation on behalf of the mob, with a lifetime take-home figure of $50 to $200 million. Mr. John Factor would eventually become politically active. He was the largest donor to John Kennedy's 1960 presidential campaign. In late 1962, Factor was scheduled to be deported to the United Kingdom, but received a presidential pardon from John F. Kennedy. He became a naturalized American citizen in 1963. John and his association of criminal mob figures earned him a spot in the Mob Museum. He became a close friend with Pat Brown in California and became a major contributor to his campaigns. While in California, he gave back to the underprivileged. He made large charitable contributions to kids in the inner city. Reverend H. Brookins was from Mississippi. He moved to LA in 1965. Reverend Brookins held the first general conference west of the Mississippi in the history of the First AME Church. He became the youngest ever host pastor in the church annuals. He had also served as chairman of the hospitality and housing committees. Now when you take Factor and you add Brookins, you get Factor Brookins. In less than 4 years as the only staff member at Camp Factor Brookins, Simmons created a radical program for straightening out the most disturbed teenagers in black communities, the hardcore ghetto casualties that high schools, youth authorities, and probation departments unsuccessfully tried to salvage. Both Factor and Brookins got behind Bob Simmons, where he opened up Camp Factor Brookins in 1967.
Bob Simmons was a good, serious dude, big dude. He was about the business. He loved the kids. He didn't want us to spend time incarcerated. He wanted us to get our act together in places, and he gave us a second chance to be in a placement.
Situated on the outskirts of Banning, Camp Factor Brookins was a self-governing black family of 97 boys and one father, Mr. Bob Simmons. Nearly every boy had been to jail or juvenile hall many times. Some were murderers, others were armed robbers, and most of them were members of violent black gangs in Los Angeles, particularly the Crips. The first campsite was located in Poppy Canyon. That's 8 miles north of Banning in rugged, mountainous areas. Bob once boasted of having the baddest brothers in the city up there, black kids that no one could handle. They said it couldn't be done, that no one man could take care of 97 of these brothers. Well, he did it, and they still didn't believe it, but they kept sending him more kids. Buddha, being one of those youths that stayed in trouble, got a job working with Bob Simmons before Tookie came in.
And he saw the leadership qualities of Stanley and other people in the community who had leadership qualities, and he gave them chances at employment. He was a good dude.
It was Buddha who gave Tookie Bob Simmons' phone number. Tookie and Buddha worked for Bob Simmons as junior camp counselors in the mountains of San Diego.
If they didn't live around Tookie, Tookie didn't socially engage with you every day, you would think that he was a really horrible person. He wasn't. He was a decent cat. Loved his mother dearly, his sister dearly. He was a gentle giant.
The majority of us grew up with our mother telling us what to do. If Pops came by every once in a while, it really wasn't to see us. It was to see our mamas, because our mamas was strong. And he had to come back to get some energy, regardless to how he got it.
Bob's concepts were somewhat revolutionary and somewhat gangster. They made up their own rules. They could smoke, they could gamble, and they could bring their cars to camp. That summer, he picked up kids off the streets of Compton and Watts and drove them out the ghetto for the first time in their lives. He gave these kids an alternative to the streets and an alternative to the juvenile system. While Bob kept a low profile, he quietly became the people's champ.
We used to come out there and be with Tookie and come get him, and it was like a weekend, every weekend we would all be together.
He had 12 of the meanest, angriest brothers he could find. His philosophy was, if he could make it with them 12 kids, then he could expand the following year. However, when summer ended, none of the boys wanted to go home. So he decided to raise money for food and keep the boys together so they could all continue to live with one another. By September, he felt they were ready. He took the kids down the hill and enrolled them all in Banning High School. Simmons rented 3 rooms in the city where they all slept and studied, 7 or 8 to a room. The year on the mountain paid off. From the very first semester to the next few years, Bob's kids competed equally with the other students, and some went off to college. The following June, a lot of those students attended Cal State University Fullerton, and one received $10,000 scholarship to any university of his choice. Today's gang intervention and prevention organizations are nothing new under the sun. Bob Simmons been doing this shit. Buddha became the first known Crip to style the blue bandana, a symbol that would later define the gang's identity. He always matched it with his blue 501 Levi's, a blue shirt, and dark blue suspenders, letting the bandana hang loosely from the left back pocket of his pants. Not even a year later, after Tookie began working as a counselor, Bob Simmons' program was terminated. Shortly after the termination of Bob's program, according to Tookie, there was a problem brewing with another West Side gang, the Hoover Groovers.
Yeah, so, things were sort of heating up in the street with us, the gangs and things like that, In
1972, San Diego summer camp was terminated. Things had gotten out of hand when Lil Chocolate, a member of the Hoover Groovers, was murdered. The mysterious killing of Chocolate and the shootings of other Hoover Groovers were blamed on the West Side Crips, but mainly on one person, Buddha. Buddha was arrested for at least 2 murders, but released because of insufficient evidence. The West Side Crips were ambushing the Hoover Groovers regularly, but neither Buddha nor any West Side Crips claimed the killing of Chocolate. Little Chocolate, whose government name was Noel Willingham, was killed in gang violence at Locke High School, October the 9th. By 1972, tensions between the West Side Crips and the Inglewood Chain Gang had reached a boiling point. That same year, Douglas Green of Inglewood was killed in gang-related violence, leading to several arrests of Crip gang members. The murder took place at a house party, one of many violent clashes between the 2 gangs. Later that year, just before Christmas 1972, Buddha and Monkey Man were denied entry into a party on 102nd Street in Inglewood. Furious that they couldn't get in and have fun, they pulled out a gun and got cracking. By the time the gunfire stopped, 6 people were wounded and 1 man was dead. Buddha was arrested for murder, but was later released due to insufficient evidence. The deceased was identified as Curtis Buddha, approximately 19 years old. The wounded included Neil, Michael White, Kevin Walker, Fred Jackson, and Ernest Cole. Fred Jackson was a baseball player for the Dorsey Dons. Neil died years later after suffering from a stroke. Bob would then open up a boys' home in Compton, located off Santa Fe on Pine Street. Was you good friends with Buddha?
Anybody that was a part of West Side Crip was my homie, was my real ones.
While in Compton, Sunday, May 13, 1973, Bob published a small Compton newspaper with an article called The Baddest. It featured Buddha, Little James, Warlock, Melvin Hardy, Sweetback, Monk, and Tookie on the cover.
If you that poster that you posted on your page, Buddha and Tookie are in the front, Bogard and Warlock are kind of in the back. I'm in the back because when I came, they had already set up. I'm there with the beanie on, and Lil James Compton from the 118th Street is right behind me. See, what people don't understand, in the beginning, it was East Side, West Side, and Compton. The Grandies, Wilmington Arms, whatever y'all want to call it, where Big Rebo and Bitter Child and Honcho and them is from. Mac Thomas and them, Boot Hill. See, people don't know nothing about that, but they always want to talk about the beginning.
Bob opened up the Red House in 1973 with two things in mind: money and decreasing gang violence. In order to get the money, he had to make sure the gang violence was down in the city of Compton. He opened up his doors and gave rooms to members of rival factions.
Because if you know, we were inside of those rooms. It was Crips and Bloods. It was a gathering, a drawing of the community of youngsters who would end up in juvenile hall from our lifestyle.
In Buddha's final moments, on February 27, 1973, Buddha got into a dispute with his homeboy AC's brother, Michael Harrison, over a broken stereo in their mother's house. The argument quickly escalated, and Buddha slapped Michael across the face. Michael left the room. When he returned, he had a gun in his hand. Pointing the gun at Buddha, he threatened to kill him. But Buddha didn't back down. Instead, he taunted him. "Kill me, fool! Kill me! This is Crip!" That day marked a devastating loss for the West Side Crips. Shortly after, Bob Simmons broke the news to Tookie. Bob Simmons called Tookie into his office. They sat there silent when Bob gave Tookie the news. Buddha had been killed. Buddha was rushed to Centinela Hospital in Inglewood, but it was too late. He was gone. At the time of his death, Buddha was likely the third or fourth Crip to be killed, following Craig Craddock and two different individuals known as Chocolate. Buddha's death marked the loss of one of the early figures of Crip history. His style, reputation, and fearless attitude made him a legend in the streets of LA. But throughout Los Angeles, one thing was for certain: the war was far from over. As a symbol of Buddha's death, the original Crips chose to wear the blue bandana as part of their uniform. I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to click the like button. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And don't be afraid to leave a comment. Have a great day.